So I do realize that there's a good number of you that I don't know this morning, and so I'm about to do something that's apparently quite good for the soul, and that's confession. Now, those of you that do know me well, this is not going to be a colour you surprised moment, and for those of you that know me less well, it's not going to surprise you either. I'm not perfect. Wow. And I'm sure, like many of you, I am painfully aware of many of my imperfections. But then, there's also plenty that I don't know. And the whole point about things that you don't know is that you don't know them. And I'm pretty sure that if we sat down for enough time, like all you all could make me aware of the rest of my imperfections that I don't already know about. But if you do, can you please do it kindly? Once I received a 4,000-word email where someone laid out for me in glorious technicolor all of my failings from their perspective. So can you not do that? Can you just have a nice conversation with me? Because that kind of critique can be quite devastating. But while knowing that we're not perfect is really important for us to be able to receive the good news of Jesus, it can also play havoc with how we understand the gospel. And it can play out something like this. God is perfect. I'm not. I am made for relationship with God, but not while I'm imperfect. So I need to do something to make myself perfect so that I can get permission to get into his presence. And then when I'm in his presence, then I need to do lots of really good things to make me stay perfect so that he doesn't turf me out. That is one of the most massive distortions of the good news. That's not good news. That's like really bad news. But the good thing is that the Bible is chock full of lenses that help us to kind of undistort that and to see the good news for what it really is. Now, one of those lenses is a seemingly random character that pops up out of nowhere with a crazy name, as somebody said to me this week, like not one to name your baby, but one who stands as like a blazing signpost for us. That's Melchizedek. And it is fair enough. You wouldn't call your baby Melchizedek, would you? Melchizedek Jones, reporting for duty. No, it just doesn't quite jive, does it? But before we dive into Melchizedek, I want us to remember where we are in the story. Now, for those of you that haven't been around, we're in this letter to a bunch of people called the Hebrews. And these were people who lived in the first century. They were converts to Jesus from the Jewish faith, but they were being persecuted for their faith. And so they'd kind of decided that they were on the verge of turning back to their Jewish faith. They felt like God had gone silent on them. But this preacher in Hebrews is saying to them, no, God hasn't gone silent on you. Like he's speaking his loudest, clearest, truest word in Jesus. And Jesus he's the true and better of everything that you've been putting your hope in. He's the true and better messenger. He's the true and better message. He's the true and better Moses. He's the true and better priest. And that's kind of where we got to in chapter 5. Now, let's remember why priests matter. I guess this is like a quick refresher on priests, okay? Like Priests 101. We were made for face-to-face relationship with God. But because we chose to rule our own worlds, because we chose to trust ourselves, because we chose sin, we broke ourselves and we broke the world. Imperfect. And sin wasn't kind of like a minor disappointment for God. As a result of sin, we're exiled from his presence. We're shut out. We're not permitted to enter. But God didn't want us to stay that way. God is all about making a way. He's always been about making a way for us back into his presence. Because of sin, we need a mediator. We need someone who's going to stand in the gap, somebody who's going to represent us to God and God to us. We need a mediator. We need a priest. And priests were something that the Hebrews knew really well. But Jesus was the priest that they needed. Jesus is the priest that we all need. And just to be clear, like Jesus is really exclusive about this. He doesn't make any bones about this. There is nobody else who can priest for us. Jesus is the only one that can be our priest. He's the perfect priest for imperfect people. Now, does that sound like good news? He's the one that gains us permanent access back into the presence of God. And so this is really important. Now, back in chapter 5, the preacher is about to explain to them, like he's about to give them this awesome example of a priest. You want to understand how good Jesus is as a priest. I'm going to give you an example. But then he kind of stops himself, okay? And he puts a little flag in the conversation. You know the way that some people are really good at, like, you know when you get in a meandering conversation and it kind of goes here, there, and everywhere. And sometimes you just forget how you even got there. Some people are really good at putting a flag in the conversation to remind you. They say, oh, right, we'll come back to that now. Well, the preacher's put in a flag in the conversation, and he's saying, we're going to come back to that. He's saying, because the thing is, I can't give you this example right now because you've decided that you don't want to grow up. And this is a meaty example. This is like meatloaf. Like, you're going to have to chew on this. And because you've decided that you don't want to grow up, then you can't have the meatloaf yet. But then he says to them, actually, I'm confident that you are going to want to grow up. And here's how. You do this by throwing your anchor up to Jesus. You put your hope in him. And that's why we had that massive kind of hug of hope last week from Jonathan. But this flag that he puts in the conversation is a flag called Melchizedek. And he kind of keeps tantalizing us. He keeps dangling this name in front of us. He's saying, this is the example of the priest that you need. And now, at long last, after 3 weeks of being teased with the name Melchizedek, we're going to find out why he's the example of the priest that we need. We're finally going to get the answer to this question, who the heck is Melchizedek? Now, honestly, right, the temptation for me this morning was to kind of go full Bible trivia mode. Melchizedek is really cracking to do a Bible study about. Now, you know, if we were sat in like a little circle of 5 of us and we were hashing out who is Melchizedek, it would be the best Bible study ever. He's a bit more challenging to package for a Sunday morning preach. Because so many arguments have been had over this guy who is one of the most mysterious, one of the most intriguing characters in the whole of the Bible. There's been an awful lot of like actual ink and digital ink spilled over the identity of this guy. And so what I want to do this morning, I want to invite you all to come on a little journey with me, okay? Now, yesterday, Caleb and I walked to Tredegar. And in order to walk to Tredegar, there's a small obstacle in the way, and that is like Dowless. You gotta walk all the way up to the top of Dowless Top and flipping heck, like it's a slog. But you know when you get there, the view from the top is really worth it. Okay? So the first part of this morning, right? Can we get walking boots on and can we get our little packs on? Make sure you got your energy gels, okay? Because the first bit of this is a steep uphill, but it is so worth it for the view that we get at the top. Okay? So are we all good with that? See, I think permission's really important. So I'm just asking for your permission before we go on this hike, okay? It's so worth it. It's so worth it because the view that we get from the top, the destination of this hike, this man, he really matters because he's a lens to show us the actual good news that is summed up in perfection, permission, and permanence. And we'll get to that at the end. So, first question then, who the heck is Melchizedek? Now, he makes 3 appearances in the Bible. Genesis 14, Psalm 110, and Hebrews 7. Now, there's approximately 1,000 years between each of these appearances. The first appearance, and I'm going to be very brief about this, right? Bit of backdrop to the story. Genesis 14, Abram, or as he's later known, Abraham, very important guy, he's regarded as the father of the faithful. He is the father of the nation of Israel. He's where it kind of all began. He's the one who God promised, I'm going to bless all nations through you. You're going to be the pipeline of all of my blessing to all of the nations. So Abram's a pretty important guy, right? Now, Abram's got a nephew called Lot. Lot lives in a place called Sodom, and Sodom is ruled over by a king of Sodom who's one of a group of kings, 5 kings, who refuse to pay tariffs in a kind of trade war with these group of 4 kings over from the east. It's like nothing ever changes, isn't it? Now, because they're not paying their tariffs, the kings of the east decide that they're going to invade them. Lot gets kidnapped. Abraham is not chuffed, okay? That's where this story begins. So Abram decides that he's going to go all kind of Liam Neeson in Taken, and it's like, I'm going to find you and I'm going to kill you. And he does, right? Abraham pulls together this kind of little kind of mercenary army of 318 mercenaries. I'm fighting with the crows this morning. I'm going to find you and I'm going... No, I'm not. He takes his little tiny army against these armies of the four kings, and you think, like, either this guy is very brave or very stupid. Turns out he's very brave. Because, like, I don't know if you caught him what Caleb read. He said when Abram was returning from the slaughter of the kings, he wiped them out, all of them. And he's on his way back from this battle, and this happens. After Abram returned from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley, around by Jerusalem. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of the Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hands." You want to know how Abram won? There's the answer. God did it. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Then Melchizedek disappears. Actually, it didn't say that in the text, but like that's kind of what happened, all right? So let's build a little portrait here, okay? Abram's passing by Salem, which later becomes Jerusalem, and the king of Salem pops out to encounter Abram and his band of brothers. Salem means peace. So the king of peace comes out to meet these guys as they're coming back from battle. Interesting. He appears out of nowhere, then he disappears again. Now, you know in a Bible that is so big on family trees and genealogies, and there's so much begatting going on, isn't there? And so-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat so-and-so. Nobody begat Melchizedek. Where did he come from? Where did he go? No, I'm not going to finish that. He just disappears again. He then brings out this meal of bread and wine. That was a very well-placed. He's a king and a priest of the Most High God. He's the first priest that's mentioned in the Bible. He blesses Abram, which is something that priests do. Abram tithes to him, which means he gives him a tenth of everything that he has. And that means that Abram's recognizing him as a priest. He's recognizing him as somebody that's greater. And he seems to have no beginning and no end. Is he starting to remind you of anyone? But who is he? Well, there are three main options, okay? Three main schools of thought about who is Melchizedek. There are lots of niche options as well, but we don't have time to go into the niche options this morning. These are just three main, okay? Now, the first one is that he's just a regular bloke. The second one is that he's a type. Now, a type is a real person, event, or a thing that happens in the Old Testament that points forward to a greater reality in the New Testament. Think of it like a shadow, okay? The shape is real, but the substance is Jesus, okay? And then there's the third option, which is the coolest one by far. Please be number three. Please be number three. This is a Christophany is the pre-incarnate Jesus. So Jesus, before his birth in Bethlehem, inserting himself physically, really into the story. Please be number three. Please be number three. Now, I'm pretty sure it's not number one, okay? I think we can strike number one, okay? But as for whether it's number two or number three, I think I have an opinion. And it's not unimportant. But that's not the point. This is not the reason why the preachers brought up Melchizedek at this point. He isn't here so that we can play unsolved mysteries. The preachers got him here as a lens. And what are we meant to see through this lens? Well, what can you see there? Scary peppers. They are quite dark, actually, aren't they? Yeah. Now, how many of you can see a face there? Is there a face there? No! What can we see there? It's praise in the middle of an orange. What about that one? Now, that feels kind of appropriate, doesn't it? 70s rock star on a toasty. Now, you can say it, right? Humans do this thing, right? It's called pareidolia, where we see faces where there are none. I was going to post a picture up on there of one of our tiles in the bathroom floor. There's a pig on the tile, except there's no pig there. I can see the pig's face and it stares at me. but it's not really there, okay? And so we constantly see faces where there are none. And yet, in Melchizedek, there is a face that we're meant to see. And the face that we're meant to see is Jesus. Melchizedek is a lens. And so whether Melchizedek is the shadow or the substance, we are meant to see Jesus. That's the whole point. He's meant to show us Jesus, who is this better hope through which we draw near to God. Now, one more thing to add to this portrait. Psalm 110, okay? Melchizedek disappears from the story for 1,000 years, and then he pops up here again in Psalm 110. And this is David, and he's writing about the Messiah. He's writing about the king that is still to come. And he says, the Lord. Now, the first Lord there is God himself, it's Yahweh. He says to my Lord, and this is David writing about somebody who's going to come after him, okay? Now, bear in mind, the way that they always say, respect your elders, Your elders are always greater than you, kind of thing, the people who came before you. And that's true in this culture. But David is saying here, there's going to be one that will come after me, but he's going to be my Lord. He's going to be greater than me. One of my descendants is going to be greater than me. And this descendant, God's going to say to him, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. This one is going to be a king, okay? So that's the first thing. He's a king. But then later on in Psalm 110, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind, you are a priest forever. So this Messiah, this king who's going to come and save the world is going to be a king and he's going to be a priest, okay? Now, David could have left us to join the dots here for ourselves, okay? But there is only one other character that is mentioned in the whole Bible who is also a king and a priest. Melchizedek. Thankfully, he doesn't leave us in any doubt here. He draws the line really clearly. He kind of slaps us across the face with it. And so this is who he is. This is the portrait that we've got. And Melchizedek is tied to the Messiah. But how does he point to Jesus? Well, this is exactly what the preacher wants us to see. And not for the sake of having good Bible trivia, but so that we have a lens to see the better hope through which we draw near to God. Our perfection, our permission, our permanence of relationship with God. And after dangling all of these flags at us through chapters 5 and 6, now in chapter 7, bam, he's going to hit us hard with who Melchizedek is and why he's like Jesus. The Hebrews had been kind of tempted to go back to the priesthood, their priesthood, as a way of gaining access to God. They'd been tempted to go back to Abram as the kind of towering figure of faith. And he's saying to them, Don't go back. Let me show you a better hope. I want to show you a better way. And so what he does is the preacher kind of revisits then everything that Genesis 14 has just told us and Psalm 110 has just told us about Melchizedek, but kind of overlays it onto a fuzzy picture of Jesus so that we see the picture of Jesus all the more clearly. So first off, just like Melchizedek, Jesus has no beginning and no end. So whoever he is, whatever he does, he is that forever, and he is doing that forever. And in a world where everything changes so quickly, don't we want a king that is forever? Melchizedek's name meant king of righteousness, and he was the king of a place called peace. Now, righteousness is a kind of big Bible word that just means having a perfect internal standard for how you relate to others. Now, we've all got a standard, haven't we, for how we relate to others. I've got a standard for how I relate to people, and I want to live up to that standard, but I don't. He has a perfect standard for how he's going to treat people, and he always lives up to it. He's the king of justice. Not only that, but he's also the king of peace, the king of Salem, the king of shalom. That word shalom means nothing missing, nothing broken. Wherever he is ruling, nothing is missing, nothing is broken. Don't you want to live under a king like this? He blesses Abram. Verse 7 says that the lesser is blessed by the greater. The priests always blessed the people. They would go into the presence of God in the temple to offer a sacrifice for people. Then they would turn around and come out and they would bless the people. Jesus has offered a sacrifice and he is coming out and he is blessing the people. Do you know, even Abram, after being blessed by him, knows that he's greater. And so Abraham tithes to him. Now this one needs a little bit of explanation, all right? So we're still kind of on the uphill. We're almost at the top of Dowless now, okay? Not quite there, but we're getting close. Now, this whole business of the tithes, right? When God established a priesthood, he said only people from the tribe of Levi could be priests. There you go. These are the ones who represent people to God and God to people. But in order that they can go about their work of priesting and they can focus on that, so they don't have to have like a side hustle to kind of support them financially, the other 11 tribes would give tithes. They would give a tenth of everything that they had to the priests so that the priests could go about their priestly work. And only people from the tribe of Levi could collect tithes, okay? The priests who collect tithes, now listen to this is quite scathing, isn't it? The priests who collect tithes are men who die. Great. So Melchizedek is greater than these because we're told that he lives on. In addition, we might even say that these Levites, the ones who collect the tithe, paid a tithe to Melchizedek. Now, I'll explain this in a moment. Paid a tithe to Melchizedek when their ancestor Abram paid a tithe to him. For although Levi wasn't born yet, the seed from which he came was in Abram's body when Melchizedek collected the tithe from him. Timelines are helpful here, okay? There's Melchizedek. Abraham is giving a tithe to Melchizedek. Levi doesn't pop up for another 600 years. And so, and you know this whole thing of I think in the version that Caleb read, it said, when his seed was still in the loins of his ancestor Abraham. I hate the word loins. I can't bring myself to buy loin in the supermarket because I hate the word. But the seed was still in the loin of his ancestor. And so this means then that Levi is paying a tithe to Melchizedek, and only Levi and his priests could be the ones that could collect a tithe. So by paying this tithe, he's saying, this priesthood is greater. This one is better. Okay? Does that make sense? I'm sorry I had to use the word loins there. But here's the thing, right? This is the hinge. You know, if the priesthood of Levi, on which the law was based, could have achieved the perfection that God intended, why did God need to establish a different priesthood with a priest in the order of Melchizedek instead of the order of Levi and Aaron? Why do we need a new priesthood? It's because the old priesthood never made anything perfect. And the new priesthood doesn't come from Levi. It comes from a different line altogether. Jesus is appointed a priest in the order of Melchizedek. He's patterned after Melchizedek. He's a priest and a king forever. Jesus wasn't part of the house of Levi, so he shouldn't have been allowed to be a priest. But God swears him in by, as Jonathan was talking about last week, an unbreakable oath. A priest forever. Not because he belonged to the right family, but because of the power of an indestructible life. You know, if I'm going to want somebody that's going to represent me to God and represent God to me, I want somebody who's going to be able to do that forever. I don't want somebody who's going to fall apart. I don't want somebody who's going to die like me. I'm going to die. I need a priest that lasts forever. And in Jesus, we've got a priest who is a priest because of the power of an indestructible life. He's priest forever. And so just like Melchizedek, he's the king of peace. He's the king of righteousness. He is priest forever. Now, we could go down some major kind of theological rabbit holes here. But why does all this matter, okay? Why have we taken this walk up to Dowless Top? Why should I care? 3 words: perfection, permission, and permanence. Perfection. Our God is a holy God. He's perfect in all his ways. We cannot enter the presence of a holy God if we're not perfect. And no matter how close anyone got under the law, under the old priesthood, they never got to perfection. The law never made anyone perfect. That's kind of good news in a way, isn't it? Because if the law could make people perfect, then people, we should give ourselves to living according to that law. But the law never made anyone perfect. Instead, there's a new priesthood. There's a new law. And that law is the law of grace. And under the law of grace, there's a better hope, a new priest, a priest forever. Do you know, I love this phrase, appointed on the basis of the power of an indestructible life. Think about Jesus. Think, indestructible life. Life that cannot be destroyed. You look at the life that we see on the earth around us, we look at our own lives, we don't feel particularly indestructible. Jesus has indestructible life. For the law appoints men in their weakness as high priests, but the word of the oath, which came later than the law, appoints a son who has been made perfect forever. How do you take a hold of this hope? You don't need to be perfect. You need a perfect priest. He is the perfect human who did what we couldn't, who died in our place, who absorbed the punishment for our sin on the cross. And now he is alive forever, and he is seated in the place of all rule and government and power and authority to be your priest forever. Verse 22 harks back to Psalm 110, says, "The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind." Oh, that's good, isn't it? The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. How many times have you made promises that you've broken, oaths that you have then gone back on? God makes an oath. He don't break it. You can trust him. And he said to Jesus, "You are a priest forever." This makes Jesus the guarantor of a better covenant. Do you know what a guarantor is? You know when somebody has like a debt and they don't have the resources, that in case they can't pay, they have to have someone who has the resources to sign up and say, "I'll guarantee that debt." Jesus is the guarantor of this covenant. And do you know what he's got? Do you know what resources he has at his disposal? Absolutely everything. He'll never run dry. And so that means that this new covenant, this new unbreakable contract promise that God has made with his people, is guaranteed that everyone who comes to Jesus by faith will have his life forever. Guaranteed. Jesus has acted as the guarantor to underwrite our debt. It is paid. It's done. It's like you said last week. It's not about what you've done. It's not about do. It's about what he's done. And he's done it all. It's finished. It's paid. And now, because it's paid, it doesn't mean that we stay at a distance. It means that because our high priest has paid the price, we have permission to enter the presence of the Most High God. He's overcome sin and death. And so our better hope now gives us access with freedom and confidence into the presence of the living God. He's the kind of high priest we need because he's holy and blameless, unstained by sin. He's been set apart from sinners and has been given the highest place of honor in heaven. Unlike those other high priests, he doesn't need to offer sacrifices for his own sin every day. They did this first for their own sins and then for the sins of the people. But Jesus did this once for all. You know what Jesus did on the cross? He has done once for all. He did this once for all when he offered himself as the sacrifice for people's sins. Now this means that there's no more need for sacrifices. He's made the perfect sacrifice of himself, which means that, because that sacrifice is done, we have unchanging access into the presence of God. Because that sacrifice will always be enough, we always have access into the presence of God. He is our access. And when we give our faith to Jesus as the only one who can save us, the only one who's the perfect sacrifice, and the one who is now seated in the most high place, we have access. And remember, Jesus is priest king, okay? He is truly God, and he is truly human. Who better to represent us to God and God to us than God himself who became one of us? Jesus doesn't just open the door. Jesus is the door, and he's the destination. Union with the three-in-one God, children of the Father, saved by the Son, indwelt by the Holy Spirit. And one more thing from this priest picture. The priest would go into the most holy place in the temple, would offer sacrifice for the people, and having made sacrifice for the people, would then turn around and come out and face the people, and he would bless the people. Just like Melchizedek blessed Abram. Jesus went into the most holy place. He offered the perfect sacrifice, and he turns around, and now he faces us. And do you know what he does? He blesses us. And do you know what he's doing right now? He is blessing us. Present tense. There's something that I reckon affects a good number of us. When we give our lives to Jesus, we don't become perfect instantly. I kind of wish we did, Wouldn't it be great, You give your life to Jesus, and you wake up the next morning and like you're practically perfect in every way. That's not how he set this up. We give our lives to him, and a process of transformation begins by his Spirit living in us. And as we walk with him, so we're changed to become like him. He declares us righteous. The Bible calls it justification. He justifies us. And then he begins the process of making us righteous. We are being saved. We're being sanctified. But from time to time, the old kind of pre-Jesus us rears its head. Or I don't know about you, but that's certainly been the case for me. And the temptation is to run away and to hide, to do what they did in the Garden of Eden, because it's almost like we believe that we needed our priest and we needed his grace to get in, but now we stay in through sheer willpower and human effort. That's rubbish. When you foul up, don't run away from him. Run to him. We do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence to receive mercy and to find grace to help in time of need. It is through this better hope that we draw near to God, and we keep on drawing near. You're never going to reach a point where you don't need to draw near anymore. You need to draw near, and you need to live near. And there will be a day when the process will be complete, when we will be made perfect. So as John says, see how great is the love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now. And what we will be has not yet been made known, but we know that when we see him, we'll be made like him, for we'll see him as he is. Today's part of the process, guys. Today isn't the pinnacle. And so, amid the mess of the process, run to him. Run to him because you have permission. And not just today, but forever. This is a permanent thing. You know the way that human relationships are often a little bit transient, aren't they? A bit transactional. I'm not getting from this relationship what I hoped to. I'm not getting from this friendship what I expected to. So I'm just going to withdraw. How much of that do we project onto God? How much of that do we think, oh, do you know what? Is he going to get sick of me? Is he going to want to defriend me? Worse than that, is he going to want to unsave me? Well, good news, and don't take my word for it. The former priests were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office, but he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. Look at those three words: permanently, forever, always. Indestructible King, permanently, forever, always, your priest and my priest. He is always there because God swore an oath and God doesn't change his mind. Our high priest is committed to us. He never changes his mind. So do you know what God is never going to do? He's never going to get sick of you. He knew you before he saved you. He is saving you, and he's going to love you forever. He never needed you, and he never needed anything from you. But he wanted you, and he wanted you because he loved you, and he loved you because he's love. And that doesn't change. He is able to save to the uttermost, save completely, save at all times those who draw near to God through him. And this is a permanent arrangement. This is a forever thing. Did you catch that line there? He always lives to make intercession for you. He always lives to stand in the gap. He always lives to mediate. And you know, there's so much to that intercession. There's so much to him mediating for us. And yet there's one thing that always kind of astounds me. Right now, like Jonathan said last week, he's praying for you. Right now, he's praying for you. And what difference does that make? A guy called Robert Murray McShane said this: I ought to study Christ as an intercessor. If I could hear Christ praying in the next room, I would not fear a million of enemies, but the distance makes no difference. He is praying for me. And he's praying for you. And he's doing that right now. You know, on your best days, you know, on the days when you think you could take on the world and you think that you could practically earn your own salvation, he's praying for you because you need it. On those days where you've made the biggest mess ups, you've made the biggest foul ups, you feel like the biggest fraud tacking your name onto Jesus, do you know what he's doing for you? He's praying for you. And you know, on every day in between, do you know what else he's doing for you? What is he doing for you? He's praying for you. He is praying for you every day until you see him face to face. And the kind of prayers that he's praying, Father, they're mine. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but I ask that you keep them from the evil one. Sanctify them in your truth. I thank you that you love them even as you have loved me. Praying for you. Right now. He's begun a good work. And do you know what he does with everything that he starts? He completes it. He finishes it. He is our perfection. He is our permission. And he is our permanent access into the presence of God. So he's able to save us completely. And he's prepared a table for us. Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, the king of peace, brought a feast of bread and wine to keep Abram and his men going after the battle. Do we need a more blazing signpost than that he comes to meet us in the heat of battle? This table that points us forward to a king of peace who would sacrifice himself to become the feast that saves us and sustains us. This morning, there's a mystery that becomes a meal in front of us. At this table, where the bread and the cup becomes a way that he meets with us and feeds us, a pathway of his grace into our lives. We remember and rejoice in the mystery of God become flesh, God given for us. As we come to this table this morning, we don't come to it because we're perfect. We come to this table precisely because we know that we're not. And he not only permits us to come, but he welcomes us. And at this table, we meet with a priest who no longer needs to offer any sacrifice for sin. He's done it all when he offered up himself. And this morning, he turns and he blesses us. Even as he prays for us, he blesses us. He's the better hope through which we draw near to God. So let's draw near to him. And this morning, as we come to this table, you know, if the enemy is whispering in your ear a 4,000-word list or longer of all of the reasons why you are unworthy to come to this table, to tell you how much of a failure you are, and how much because you are a failure, he can't possibly love you, simply respond with, take it up with my high priest. Because of him, we get to come to this table with confidence because we are forever loved. You know, if you haven't come to Jesus yet, if you haven't recognized him as king, priest, if you haven't given your life to him and you don't intend to, then I say with the greatest of gentleness, then this table is not for you at this point in time. It doesn't mean that that's forever the case. But you know, if you're not perfect and you know that you need a perfect priest, why not give him your life today? He gives you all that he is in return for yourself. You think, well, what an exchange. I give him me in all of my mess and failure, and what I receive in return is the life of the perfect one. What an exchange. Church, we're not perfect, but we have a perfect priest who is praying for us right now, and by his Spirit, he is with us. Come and meet with him. Jesus doesn't just open the door, he is the door, and he's the destination. So let's come. Guys, do you want to